So perhaps we should go ahead and get started. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at this Community Steering Committee meeting. It's great to be with you again. We have a very, very busy agenda, so we'll go ahead and start right away. Buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros en esta reunión del Comité Directivo Comunitario. Tenemos una agenda bastante llena, así que vamos a empezar inmediatamente. Monique, can we go to the next slide to provide the interpretation instructions? Thank you. Voy a dar estas instrucciones en inglés y después en español. I'm going to provide these instructions in English and then in Spanish. If you want to access interpretation assistance, please locate the, if you're joining through your tablet or iPad, please go ahead and locate the menu on the 3 dots icon on the bottom of your screen. And from then you can select language interpretation. And after that, you can select the language of your preference. If you speak English, then go ahead and select English. If you're joining from your computer, you can locate the interpretation icon in the form of a globe, click there, and then from there you can select English or Spanish. Same if you're joining through your smartphone, you can locate the 3 dots menu icon, and from there select language interpretation, and then go ahead and select English or Spanish. I'm now going to provide these instructions in Spanish. Para las personas que requieran servicios de interpretación, si se están uniendo a la junta a través de su tablet o iPad, pueden localizar el menú de 3 puntos que se encuentra en su pantalla, hacen clic ahí y seleccionen Language Interpretation o interpretación del lenguaje. Después pueden seleccionar el idioma de su elección, ya sea inglés o español. Si hablan español, seleccionen español. Si se están conectando a través de su computadora, a favor de localizar el icono con forma de globo que dice Interpretation o interpretación, y de ahí pueden seleccionar inglés o español. Si se están reuniendo a través de su teléfono inteligente o smartphone, pueden localizar el menú con 3 puntos y de ahí pueden seleccionar Language Interpretation y entonces seleccionen inglés o español, en su caso español. Okay, perfect. I think we're all where we are supposed to be. So with that, I will turn it over to Monique to kick us off with the meeting agenda.
Thank you so much, Domingo. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you all. It was great to see many of you last month in person. We certainly have a lot more work to do this month as well. So great to be here with you all. Before I get started and go over the agenda in detail, I just want to do a quick roll call. And just let me know if you're here. Manuela? Manuela? Let's see. Okay. Olga? Wendy?
I'm here.
All right, Wendy.
Thank you.
Rudy? Juan Miguel? Jason? Mariano?
Present.
All right. Alejandro?
Present.
Stan?
Present.
Right. Leslie?
Here.
Jenny?
Present.
Right. Diane? Or Jose?
Hi, I'm Jose.
Right. Thank you, Jose. Shelby? Idema? Christopher? Yanet? Maria, oh, was that Yanet? Maria? Marie? Mauricio? Guadalupe. Okay. Marisela. Okay, saw her come on in. Okay, David Flores. Trinidad.
Present.
Lee.
Here.
Great. Good to see you. Welcome back. Elsa.
Presente.
All right. Maritza. Okay. Zach. And Mariela. All right. Thank you so much. And as others come in, I'll be sure to write them down as present. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. Okay. I hope you all can see my screen here. I'm going to share the slideshow so it's a little bit bigger on your screen. Before we get started, I want to make sure we have time to do updates, and we have kind of a big update we want to share with you all. After we do the updates, you all received a pre-recorded presentation from the California Air Resources Board staff. So Liliana, who's here, provided that pre-recorded presentation with support of her team at CARB around the state implementation plan and some potential actions to consider as part of the community emission reduction program that you all are developing. We also received a pre-recorded presentation, and this was sent out mid last week from Brenda at the Climate Action Campaign around decarbonization potential strategies for the community emission reduction program as well. And so these decarbonization strategies came from the San Diego County Decarbonization Framework. So you should have received that as well. And if you didn't receive these presentations, I can also put a link to them a little bit later in the chat box so that you all have access to that as well. What's going to take the majority of our time today is looking at some potential SERP strategies from some previous transportation planning documents that were presented to us by Caltrans and also SANDAG, I think back in April. So we're going to be looking at some of those strategies and taking into considerations which ones you'd want to, move forward as part of this SERP process. And then we'll have some opportunity for public comments and we'll have some closing remarks as well. So that's a big agenda that we have planned, and we hope to be able to really be able to focus most of our time on this activity, which is really going to build out the strategies for the SERP, specifically on heavy duty trucks and passenger vehicles, which will be our main focus today's conversation. But before we dive into seeing if folks have any questions on any of the pre-recorded presentations, I wanted to provide folks with an update regarding an issue that we've been tracking for the past few months. Our office just learned of this actually this morning, and so I apologize for not having sent this out sooner. We were just kind of processing the information ourselves this morning. We learned recently that Representative Assembly Member David Alvarez has requested to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee that an audit be done on CARB's recent regulatory actions regarding zero emission vehicles requirements as they pertain to operations at land ports and port of entries at the California-Mexican border. This audit is something that's being requested by his office, even though this policy has not been implemented yet. So it's not typical that these audits take place before an actual implementation, from my understanding, before an implementation of such regulations. If you recall, I think it was back in April, the Community Steering Committee took action to support a letter of opposition to legislation that was being proposed by Assembly Member Alvarez, in essence trying to basically stop the application of CARB's rules in terms of transitioning to zero emission vehicles, particularly for heavy duty trucks at the border. And so many are pointing to this new action as really a similar strategy to, or really with the intention of similar outcomes, is really to stop the transition, particularly at the border, the transition towards zero emission vehicles. So as I mentioned, you all had submitted a letter of opposition to that legislation, stating, unless things were to change in terms of what the outcomes of that legislation, or if that legislation were to change, that the CSC did not support. So we wanted to elevate this recent request being made by Assemblymember Alvarez, because it's an issue that you've all been tracking, and you've all have taken some opposition to legislation that was very similar in nature. I do want to highlight and uplift that there are a number of environmental and environmental justice organizations throughout the state of California that are opposing this request from Assemblymember Alvarez to audit this CARB regulation that hasn't been implemented yet. So I put here basically what, and I have on the second screen in Spanish, and I'll post that in just a minute. But here the groups are saying, I'm just going to read this here. Rather than auditing the rule that hasn't even taken effect, California's legislators should be focused on supporting advanced clean fleets rules, successful implementation. Undermining the regulation with an ill-timed hearing to consider an audit of the advanced clean fleets rule opens the door for polluting interests to delay implementation of these life-saving rules through lawsuits, challenges to California's unique regulatory authority, and other bad faith legal acts. This in turn further delays the critical clean air and climate benefits that California's communities are counting on, and that California's climate and clean transportation laws require. And for this reason, this is why all these groups are in opposition to that current request from Assemblymember Alvarez. For these reasons, we urge you to remove this particular item from the agenda for an upcoming committee, which the committee is going to be meeting on Monday. So it's pretty quick turnaround time. Again, here's the language, same language to the previous slide, but just in Spanish for folks who want to read that here. And I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen in just a second, or actually come out of this a little bit, because I also want to be able to share with you all the actual language in the letter, if you wanted to read that from Alvarez's office. And then also the full letter from the organizations that are opposing this action moving forward. Again, this is something that you've all have been interested in tracking, and that's why we're bringing it up in this conversation today. And given that the hearing to potentially discuss this issue is coming up on Monday, again, I apologize for the quickness in this conversation. We were just kind of informed this morning in our office, and so we wanted to bring this to you all, given that it was new information to us. But wanted to check in with folks and see, if this is something that folks did want to take any kind of action as a CSC, official action as a CSC, in terms of submitting a letter similar to the one that was submitted by these organizations here. Or if this, this is certainly not going to be the first and only time we'll probably be discussing this issue. It sounds like it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but I just wanted to open up the floor to hear folks' thoughts on this this current proposal by Assemblymember Alvarez in regards to having the state do an audit on this rule, which has not yet been implemented, which could then potentially impact the rollout of a zero emission vehicle regulation, particularly for the border community itself. But I just want to open up to see if folks have any questions, if folks have any comments, and also see where folks are in terms of potentially having this body take some potential action as well. Nicholas.
Hey, Monique. Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for elevating this. I know EHC has signed on to oppose the audit, and I just wanted to elevate. Like I think the border CSC is just like a super critical body to be able to speak on this issue, given that we're talking about cross-border trucks, right? And we know that our community here in the border has some of the highest levels of DPM and PM 2.5 in the county. And so, I think if this body is interested, I think I fully support sending a letter of opposition to this audit. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nicholas. Yeah, I'd love to hear from others as well. DPM, the diesel particulate matter, which is particularly harmful to human health, right? It's one of the #1 drivers of cancer and asthma in the region. So something that is super important, I know, to this group. Love to hear from others as well. Also, Domingo, was there anything else you wanted to add in terms of context as well?
Thank you, Monique. I think you covered it really well. I just, I think, I definitely encourage folks to, pay close attention to this action and potentially consider taking action so that, we can make sure that all the efforts that we're working on with this group, are supported by, by legislation at the state level as well, and they're not truncated by any potential, like negative impacts of the audit that the audit might have on the clean fleets rule. So.
Yeah, thank you, Domingo. I see Jenny's hand up. Jenny.
Hi, I just wanted to, would you mind going over what actions we can take?
Yeah,
I'm not quite clear. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, definitely. So there's different pathways this group can take. One potential pathway is having the group submit a letter of opposition to the request from Assemblymember Alvarez to conduct an audit on this CARB regulation. So that's one pathway, and that would require a motion to do that, and a second and a vote from the CSC members. Another pathway, right, could also be, just continue to track this item as well, and make sure that this is something that's continually right on our radar as well. And that's the second pathway, can also be in conjunction with the first as well. So really up to you what you all want to do. I want to be really mindful too of the time. The hearing is on Monday, And so, yeah. So yeah, Alejandro asked if we'd be able to make this motion right now during this meeting. The answer is yes. And, you know, given the timing of this, you know, I think maybe to simplify the motion would be, you know, supporting a letter of opposition with like similar language that we have up here on the screen, just to make sure that there's like collective understanding and in kind of the content that would then be submitted in the letter of opposition.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we submit a letter of opposition with similar language to that on the screen.
I'll second.
Thanks, Alejandro. And then if we can, I'm going to actually do roll call just to make sure that we get the votes in. And I was trying to also add in people as I saw them come in as well. So a yes vote would support the motion that would submit a letter to oppose the audit proposed by Assemblymember Alvarez's office, and submit a letter similar to the language that's listed on the screen here. So a yes vote would support the motion. So let me just kind of go down the line. Let me just do you two first since you're here. Alejandro?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Jenny?
Yes.
Right. Wendy?
I'm here. Present.
Wendy, do you support the motion that was made by Jenny and seconded by Alejandro?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Mariano?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Jose from Caltrans?
Same.
Abstain? Okay. Irma?
Yes.
Marisela?
A favor. Yes.
Okay. Trinidad? Did Trinidad come?
Yes.
Okay. Lee?
Yes.
Okay. Elsa? Sí. Okay. Okay. Zach?
Abstain.
Abstain. All right. Thanks, Zach. Is there any CSC member that I didn't call? Oh, Manuela. Manuela está aquí.
Aquí estoy yo. Me estaba
Sí.
cambiando, mil disculpas.
Oh, no problem.
Sí,
Sí? Okay.
sí.
All right. Was there anybody that
Gracias.
was there anybody that I missed? On the CSC. Okay, seeing that we've called the roll here, the motion passes. So what we'll do on our end is we'll essentially take this language right here. We'll add you know, an introductory sentence of like who the CSC is, and we'll make sure to get this submitted to before the hearing. So we'll work on this early tomorrow morning, and we'll also send a copy of this, a copy of this letter to you all in both English and Spanish tomorrow, hopefully by noonish, or by the end of the day. That gives a little bit of time. But yeah, I really appreciate you all staying up on this issue, and because of that, you all were able to kind of easily take action on this, essentially, because you all are informed on this issue as well. And like I said, I'll use this language here to draft that letter and get that sent out. Cool. Well, thank you all on that.
Monique?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Stan. Quick question.
Yeah.
Are you able to reach out to their office and see if somebody from their office can come to the next meeting so we can ask why are they doing this? Because I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, why would they be trying to do this?
Yeah.
As far as I know, they didn't reach out to the community. They didn't
Yep.
reach out to us or anything. So
You know what, Stan, that's a great idea, and I will be happy to make that request, and that be an actual agenda item next month. And I'll make that when I send the letter, I'll also make that request saying this has been a request from the CSC members. Here's where they stand on this proposed audit, but we really want, the community really wants to understand the reasons why. And so I'd certainly be happy to make that request, Dan. That's a great idea.
thank you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Any other questions or comments on this issue?
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo también desearía levantar firmas en la comunidad acerca de todo el alcance que se está haciendo y firmar nosotras también esa carta. Creo que en una ocasión firmamos también esa carta, pero pues sí sería muy buena idea. Y estoy lista para empezar a tocar puertas. Gracias, es todo.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. No, I think, yeah, I think it's a great idea, and we'll certainly gonna pursue that and hopefully get them here next month. I think it's really important that they connect directly with the community. Absolutely. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Okay. And I know that there was a presentation, a pre-recorded presentation that Liliana did a really amazing job in putting together. And I want to also, if you for some reason did not have an opportunity to listen to the presentation, I'm also going to put in the chat box the link to that presentation so that you are able to, you know, at another time listen. That's a link to the English translation, and then let me put a link to the Spanish here. But essentially, Liliana, if you want to maybe provide maybe a 1-minute highlight of what the presentation was, and then we could see if anybody has any questions.
Sure thing. And I might try to pass it on to my colleague, Hanjiro. He's here. I'm not sure if I see him. Just because he did most of the work on it, but if not, I saw Bruce Tudor here also. But let me pull up the slides and I can surely. Yeah. I think what the main point, Hanjiro's not here, right? Okay. The main point of the presentation was kind of to highlight what CARB is doing at a statewide level that can impact and address some of the concerns that the community has at the local level, specifically around the Otay Mesa heavy duty truck crossing, the 905, so all the heavy duty vehicles that would be crossing through there, passenger vehicles, so the tráfico transfronterizo, that's cross-border traffic, and local traffic also, and also some we highlighted some regulations coming up on rail and off-road equipment. And specifically, we highlighted the Advanced Clean Fleets rule, and Bruce Tudor is here, and he can give a better highlight on that one specifically.
Thank you, Liliana, and thank you very much. I think this is a very, I think it's really good timing, since one of the discussion points here was the potential audit by the JLAC, the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. As many of you know, we did adopt our Advanced Clean Fleet regulation, which requires, in general, requires larger companies to start going to zero emission vehicles to clean up those fleets far more than they are even now. And they're already quite clean based with some of the new regulations that we have in place. I think that was covered in the presentation that you all looked at. Things such as our smog check program for trucks to make sure that they're going to stay clean. But our new regulations for zero emission vehicles are going to obviously accelerate that. I will say, and I've been working with the border area a great deal. I said that in general, our advanced clean fleet regulation does impact mostly larger fleets. It also impacts something called drayage trucks. I don't think most people talk about drayage. It's the trucks that go in and out of ports. And I do believe that one of the significant issues that has been a big misunderstanding with trucking fleets at the borders has been that since they cross at land ports of entries, and I believe that term was used earlier, that they're drayage trucks, and we do not consider land ports of entry trucks as drayage trucks. Only those that go into maritime ports or the large rail yards. So in fact, while many of those trucks will be impacted possibly if they're, if they're larger fleets later, the impact really won't occur the way that a number of folks think it will. It won't be, because they're not drayage trucks. And as I said, I've been working with the border for about 2 years now, and we've provided a lot of information to the trucking community of the border. It's been a very interesting experience, and I hope that we've been very helpful for them. So again, in light of, or along with what many of the members here tonight I heard say, this is a significant positive air quality impact, along with those other regulations to keep diesels clean that were in the presentation.
Thank you so much, Bruce and Liliana. And we're actually going to have an opportunity to look at some of those state, policies, regulations as part of the activity later today, where the CSC members and community members will be able to, determine, which of those measures at the state level that they'd like to support officially as part of a SERP strategy. So I thank you for providing that foundation in both the presentation and what you shared today, because that's going to feed into our next activity as well. And so I want to open it up and see if folks have any questions or comments on what was shared today or in the presentation that Liliana and Bruce and their team put together. What I really appreciate these pre-recorded presentations, just really quickly, is that they are such a great ongoing resource for this committee, for the community at large as well. And so just really appreciate the time and effort in that pre-recorded, because it's going to be a resource that we're going to continue to look back at to better understand these issues. But does anyone have any questions or comments before we move on to the next discussion item? And I do see Jenny's comment in the chat box that she mentioned that she didn't know that land port of entry trucks were not drayage trucks. So that's a bit of new information, I think, in this space for sure.
They do consider them drayage, but in our regulations specifically, we spell out maritime and intermodal rail yard, and we do not include those as drayage trucks.
Got it. Thank you so much. Awesome. Lee.
Thank you. I have a question about the passenger vehicles. So I don't know, CARB have any regulation strategies for rental vehicles. I know some people may drive rental cars to cross-border or even from other states to enter California, but these rented cars, well, their emissions may not match California strict rules. I don't know if CARB have any kind of time for these rented vehicles. For example, in the future, do people need to drive zero emission vehicles to enter California? Is that the eventual plan?
I'd be happy to take a stab at that if you'd like.
Yeah.
On the light duty vehicle side, on cars, we don't, even in California, we don't actually require that that any of you or I go out and purchase a zero emission vehicle. We require an accelerating pace of manufacturers selling zero emission vehicles. So there will come a point where the only new vehicle that you can buy in the state would be a zero emission vehicle. I will say on the heavy duty side, rental vehicles, out of state leased vehicles or rental vehicles actually are part of the regulation. So in that case, again, with these medium and heavy duty trucks, because we in this instance, we are talking directly to fleets, saying, fleet, you have to do something. We're also talking to manufacturers and in a different rule and saying, manufacturers, you can only sell a certain percentage of the vehicles you sell have to be zero emission. But we're also telling fleets, many of you have to clean up, again, typically the larger ones. And so in doing that, yes, we are on those medium and heavy duty vehicles. We are telling even out of state rental fleets that vehicles operating in California, that percentage of your fleet is subject to our regulation, but not on light duty vehicles, no.
It's a great
Yeah, that's
question.
a clarification.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course.
Any other questions or comments? And again, we're going to be actually taking a deep dive on the state regulations that are particularly pertain to the issue areas that you've all identified. We'll be doing that as part of our activity today as well. Great, thank you so much, Liliana and Bruce. And like I said, this ongoing resource is going to be great. Oh, Alejandro.
Yeah, sorry, I put a question on the chat. So my question, is that gonna be discussed later today when we take a deep dive?
The question specifically, actually, let's hand that question to Bruce here if he's able to answer that. So which regulations are exempt? Are they exempt from, or which ones are they under enforcement?
No. Right, and thank you for that question. That's really critical. No, there are three pieces in the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation. One of those speaks specifically to state and local governments. They have some different requirements and different timelines. One of those speaks specifically to drayage trucks, and the reason, and we have for a long time, we have regulated drayage trucks specifically and by themselves, because drayage trucks, the places they run are around ports, around rail yards, and around warehouse areas, some of the most negatively impacted areas in the state, disproportionately impacted, may I say. So that's really why we look at drayage trucks. And the third piece of the regulation, it talks about high priority fleets. High priority fleets, and that covers everyone that isn't a drayage truck and isn't a state or local government entity. High priority fleets are fleets that either have 50 or more trucks, or that make $50 million or more in annual revenue and have some trucks, any amount of trucks. Smaller fleets, smaller entities, smaller, like even single owner operators, can be pulled into that high priority fleet if they work solely for that high priority fleet. The example I always use is, if Amazon, right? The trucks that deliver things to people, they're not owned by Amazon, but they are controlled by Amazon. They're told you deliver here and at this time. And so those would be the smaller fleets, but in general, that would be pulled in. But in general, most smaller fleets aren't covered under this regulation, except for drayage. Again, many of those are single owner operators, but those are the ones that cause probably the biggest biggest air quality problem in disproportionately impacted communities. And again, the trucks coming across a land port are not drayage. If they go actually into the Port of San Diego or the Port of Long Beach or LA, they actually go into that port, not just near that port to drop things off, then they could be drayage, but most don't do that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Bruce. That's incredibly helpful. Alejandro, does that answer the question for you?
Yeah, by the most part, I guess, like the nitty gritty of which are smaller fleet in Otay Mesa, like I guess I'm not sure if you will have the the answer right off the top of my head, but it does give me a clear idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if I don't know if this is data that CARB would have as a data point, but be really curious to know, you know, how many and what the percentage of kind of the breakdown of the fleet that's crossing over at the border, and kind of which ones would be categorized under the different kind of and be included in the different regulations itself. I'm not sure if CARB has that fine level of detail, but that would be really, I think, helpful for this group to understand what are those kind of state regulations down the pipeline, and how are they connected to the actual numbers of fleet here locally. Yeah, Alejandro, I see your hand up.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what I was thinking, that it would be helpful, because I've personally never known how many trucks are just making trips back and forth in the border. How does that affect like regulations on those kind of trucks that are specifically just crossing between Tijuana and San Diego? That's, you know, less than 5 miles probably, just like what they cross. But then I know that a lot of trucks from Otay Mesa go to Long Beach as well. So like understanding how many trucks are doing what in the area would probably be helpful for me, at least.
Yeah,
And
go ahead, Bruce. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and Monique, you were correct. We don't have specific regional numbers. That's actually very, very difficult, especially when we're dealing with out of state vehicles. But we do know, and Alejandro, you were talking about kind of the different types of trucks, the ones that just come in and out. There are, by law, 2 different types of operations that these trucks carry out. One of them, they can only operate in free trade zones, typically 20 to 30 miles into the state. The vast majority of those trucks, from what I have seen, and I've spent a lot of time at the border, and from what I've heard from large industry groups, the vast majority of the trucks that cross the border do that. They come from manufacturing facilities in Tijuana or in Calexico or Mexicali, and they travel in that 30-mile range. They drop things off, and then they travel back across the border. So that's very common. It's the trucks that travel further into California are less common, but I don't have the numbers on those.
Yeah, and maybe Jose has the numbers from Caltrans. Jose.
No, actually, I don't have the numbers. I'm more curious about those numbers. It will be nice to know, like both of you were mentioning this. It will be nice to know, like, let's say if 100 trucks cross the border, of those 100 trucks, how many of those are from small companies that are managing less than $50 million? How many of these trucks are actually owned by their owner or operators? So it's kind of like the truck driver actually is the one who owns the truck. It will be nice to know, especially if we're talking about like impacts to small businesses, and also a lot of these trucks, I imagine they're owned by Mexican nationals. So I don't know if that's going to preclude these companies or these truck operators to actually be able to access grants and funds from ARB or from the state or the region or for the Airquality District. So it will be good to know, what are we facing?
And as I mentioned, when it comes to the small businesses, very few of those small businesses will even be subject to this regulation, so they won't be impacted by the regulation. We are looking at some data that we have that We can't necessarily determine the small fleets, but we may be able to determine the large fleets based on some data that we collected previously.
Thank you so much.
But also, for future regulations, it'll be good to know that generally every couple of years we get more stringent regulations. So I imagine that's what's going to happen, and so it'll be good to know, like, what's the profile of these trucks.
Yeah, and thank you for raising that, Jose. I think that's like also deeply connected to the conversation we had earlier today, right? In terms of this proposed audit of these regulations. If we were to have that fine level detail, we'd be able to have those conversations in a more informed way, right? Let's go to, I thought I saw Mariela. Where was your hand up for a minute?
Yes. Hi, Mariela Rodriguez with Sandag. I just kind of want to piggyback on what Jose was saying, and also Bruce. We have been trying for quite a while to try to get a better understanding on the numbers of trucks that are both crossing the border, and which ones are domiciled in the US and which ones are domiciled in Mexico, and what at least the percentages. And that's a really hard number to get to, because these are all private companies that are operating, and for different business reasons, they don't want to release that information to the public, which is understandable. So it's always interesting that we all are trying to figure that out, and in the world of heavy data, we still don't get that number. So whatever we can do to try to get that information will be great. But we have some numbers from CBP of the trucks that are crossing the different border crossings in California. So that's, I would say, like the best number that we can get to at this point, but hopefully in some way we can try to figure that out in the future.
Yeah, and this thank you so much, Mariela. I'm glad that Caltrans, Sandag, and also CARB weighed in on this as well, right? To me, what this sounds like, and this will take us on to kind of our activity after Brenda shares a little bit, but to me, what this sounds like is a potential action item, is doing a study, right, in terms of getting those exact numbers so that we could understand who's who is under that regulation, and then what that impact is in terms of health and all of that. So to me, that sounds like a desire in terms of an action item, as a study that's specifically looking for that and getting the different folks in the room, whether it be the Border Patrol, Caltrans, whomever, right, to get that data in one place. So just saying it could be a potential action item there. For the sake of time, because I do want to reserve close to an hour for our breakout activity, Brenda from the Climate Action Campaign also shared a presentation of the San Diego County Decarbonization Framework, which those that will be in the passenger vehicle conversation breakout group will be looking at some of these strategies here. But Brenda, if you want to maybe provide like a 1-minute highlight of that presentation, or just kind of sharing what that was about, and then we could see if anybody has any questions or comments.
Sure. Thank you, Monique. Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Garcia Millán, and I'm with Climate Action Campaign. And yeah, I sent you a very short presentation, it was 5 minutes. And the idea really was to introduce you all to the County of San Diego's Regional Decarbonization Framework, which is really it is a guide that can help support local efforts to reduce carbon emissions. And so as part of the presentation, I provided some examples of actions that can be integrated into planning documents, such as the community emissions reduction program that you guys are working on. So hopefully that information was useful for you. the RDF has hundreds of actions and recommendations that are available online. So what I gave you was just a summary, but I provided you with the link just in case you wanted to take a look. And yeah, I specifically gave you recommendations for the transportation sector, but they actually have path decarbonization, 5 decarbonization pathways, which include the energy sector, circular economy, buildings, and I'm forgetting the other two. Sorry, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and I guess yeah, we will talk in more detail in the next section. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brenda. I just want to see if folks have any questions or comments for Brenda. And just for folks, I also put the link to the, let's see, I put the link to the presentation in the chat box, so you should be able to access it there as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. One more thing I forgot to say. Actually, we at Climate Action Campaign are doing outreach in 4 county districts. So I'm actually working in District 1, so in the South Bay, and I've been hosting presentations with different groups. So if anyone would like to have a more detailed presentation for your group or your community, I'll be more than happy to do that. In case you wanted to learn more, and I'll just I'll send you my email, or I'll add it to the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brenda. Anyone else in terms of questions here? Did I add someone? 1 second. Any other questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do next is we're going to go ahead and transition to the to our breakout activity in just a second. Let me just share my screen really quickly here. Second. There we go. So just to kind of as a refresher, some of the priorities that you've all have been identifying over the course of the past few months. One of the priorities is how do we ensure community care for sensitive populations and locations, such as healthcare facilities, near schools or playgrounds. And then some of the other priority areas also include passenger vehicle traffic, which will have a breakout group that'll stay in the main room to engage in that conversation. And then heavy duty traffic coming across the border, going to nearby warehouses, traveling on the 905, near housing, so that being a main priority area. Some of the other priorities that have been identified are kind of cross-border, so the Tijuana River, odors coming from the river, also, you know, trash burning from across the border and industrial activity as well. And then lastly, other priorities that have been mentioned previously, other mobile sources, so dust from ATV, from Border Patrol operations, emissions from trains that are kind of cutting through the heart of San Isidro, and then also emissions from airports. Today, we're going to be focusing in on passenger vehicle traffic and heavy duty trucks. The group that will be breaking out into the breakout room 1 will be focusing on heavy duty trucks with Domingo. and the group that will be staying with me will be focusing on passenger vehicles. We will be looking at some strategies that have been identified as part of other planning processes. So for example, statewide regulations, we'll be looking at some potential strategies there that can be incorporated into the community emission reduction program. We'll also be looking at, like Brenda mentioned, some strategies that were mentioned in the county's decarbonization framework. We'll be looking at those potential strategies to integrate into the SERP. And we'll also be looking at strategies from previous planning documents here locally for both SANDAG and Caltrans. And so looking at those planning documents and pulling from it some potential ideas to include in the SERP. Of course, we're not limited to just those ideas from other spaces and inspiration from other spaces. You all can also share additional ideas of strategies that should be included in the community emission reduction program. So what I've done is I've split up the group into two different groups, partially based upon what folks had shared before in the past in terms of what they were interested in terms of as a subcommittee being a part of that conversation. If for some reason you are in a group that you're like, that you were placed, let's say in the heavy duty diesel or heavy duty trucks group, and you really want to be in the passenger vehicle group, you can go ahead and stay in the room with me. If you're in the passenger vehicle group and you really want to be in the heavy duty trucks group, just let me know and I'll make sure that I place you in that room. So just because I've assigned you a room, do not feel that you are stuck in that room. If you prefer to be in the other room, you can certainly do so. So we'll be in these breakout rooms until about 6:45, 6:50, and then we'll come back here as a group, close out with some public comments for things that weren't on the agenda already, and then close out with next steps. How does that sound for folks?
See?
See? Okay. Gracias, Wendy. All right. I see some thumbs up. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to go ahead and assign those groups. And you should be able to, you should be able to, yes, there will be translation in each group. You should be able to join the room now. And if you have trouble, just let me know and I'll help you transition over. And then did people get the invitation?
I didn't.
Not me.
Not me.
Okay, let me and also maybe that you're in this group too, but let's
Oh
see
yeah,
here.
maybe so.
Yeah, let me check here. Okay, so I see a couple people that haven't joined. Let's see. I'm going to move Vicky to the main session and then move her back. 1 second. Okay. Now, everyone that is in this is the passenger vehicle group. Is there anyone here that would prefer to be in the heavy duty group? Jenny? Okay, let me put you there. 1 second, Jenny. One second. Okay, Jenny, you should get an invite there. Anyone else that would prefer to be in the heavy duty vehicle group? That's in this group instead. Okay, And Vicky, you haven't moved over yet. Let's see. Let me try doing that again for you. Vicky, for some reason, I'm having trouble moving you over. I'm wondering if you could log out and then log back in, and then I can move you over. Okay. All right. And Valerie, are you on the interpretation channel? Because we're going to be doing simultaneous interpretation in this group here. You are? Okay, perfect. So everybody can hear what I'm saying in Spanish. Awesome. Good. Perfect. Okay. Anyone else that would prefer to be in the heavy duty vehicle group, or folks good being in this group here, the passenger vehicle?
Hi, Monique. This is Mariela, and I was wondering if you can move me to the heavy duty vehicles.
Will do. Will do. That's a very popular group today.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do that. Okay. All right. So it looks as though it's good. We have about 14 people in this room and 12 in the other room. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put something in the chat box that will be actually navigating together in this space here. All right. Let me admit Vicky. Second. Everyone in this meeting. Okay. What you're going to see in the chat box is a link, and this link is going to take you to like a Google worksheet, and we're going to navigate that together. I see Vicky just came in, so I'm going to go ahead and put Vicky in the other room. All right, Vicky, you should be getting an invitation to get to the other room shortly. There you are. Okay, so we're all squared away. What I'm going to do as well, just so that it's easy for us to navigate, I'm also going to be sharing my screen. But like I said, I've also included that as a link in the chat box as well. Was everybody able to access that link who wanted to access that? I see a couple people in there already. Okay, great. So just as a refresher, folks had previously shared that passenger vehicles is a really important issue for San Ysidro and Otay Mesa, particularly as it relates to border wait times and idling cars at the port of entries, and particularly as it relates to traffic circulation near or around Las Americas outlets, Dairy Mart, Calle Primera, Willow Road, Camino de la Plaza, East San Ysidro Boulevard, and just to name a few. And so folks have already shared some ideas already in terms of strategies that they'd like to see be part of SERP implementation. So we've already started to integrate these into draft SERP strategies. So I just wanted to highlight this for you all. These are already starting to be integrated. These are ideas that you all generated already. And also from our conversation today, from the California Air Resources Board, there's also state like regulations that are coming down the line that could also be included. I'm just going to make this a little smaller here so that we can also kind of see the Spanish text as well. That could also potentially be included as a strategy within the SERP as well. And so these are the two kind of statewide strategies that we'd want to hear from you all, is if it's something that you'd like to support as part of the SERP. And the reason why having kind of this explicit support for a state regulation in the SERP is important, I think the example from earlier today, right? There are certain state regulations that are coming soon, right? But that just because legislation has already passed and there's regulatory language that has already been developed, that doesn't mean that there won't be efforts to try to reverse the regulation or the legislation, right? And so it's important that embedded in the SERP are regulations that you all support, so that if for some reason there's an effort to undo those regulations, it's clearly stated that the community steering committee, that the community members that were part of this process support this, and it'd be easy to organize and provide advocacy to continue to support those regulation measures. So you might be thinking, well, why do we need to support something that's already kind of in the pipeline? I think today's an example of that, is just, you know, ensuring that continued support as well. And I'm actually going to stop recording Right, folks should be joining us in about 15 seconds or so. Yeah, absolutely agree, Brenda. Incredibly unique region. And so, you know, these strategies are going to have to be just as unique as what people are experiencing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. Sorry for the
Ya
delay, but
regresamos.
we just wanted to stay a couple of minutes because we were able to cover all of the strategies. So
You're wild. I can't believe it.
it was wild, but we made it.
Okay. We weren't as successful in that way, but there was a lot of really great ideas that weren't listed in the strategies that I think I'm really excited that emerged from the conversation as well. So thank you all for sharing in the conversations, both at the heavy duty trucks and then also passenger vehicles as well. I know that our team wasn't able to get through necessarily all of them, but what I'll do is, as I begin, like I said, as I began to synthesize the strategies that you've all selected, I'm going to look at the other strategies that we didn't go through, but if they match some conversations that we've been having, I'll go ahead and include them in kind of the overall draft strategies that you'll all next meeting have a chance to dive in. And what I plan to do, hopefully, is at least a week before the meeting, send you the draft strategies to review, and they'll be in both English and Spanish. And so, which is awesome. And so that you all can then, if it's not, today wasn't your only opportunity to kind of help shape those strategies, you're going to have July and August to continue to shape those strategies. But we'll have a collection of really solid strategies, a draft strategy list to review together. And so, which is really, really exciting. Yes, I can share that, definitely. Let me share that with you. 1 second. So, yeah, I know that we're almost at time and we still have to do public comment, but I just want to hear maybe from one person from the heavy duty traffic or heavy duty vehicles conversation. What's one thing that's exciting you most of what was discussed?
Come on, folks. All of a sudden, everybody's super shy.
That's one thing.
I guess going back and rereading the strategies and going more into depth on them.
Yeah,
that's exciting, right?
Definitely excited, because there certainly was a lot to cover there. And like I said, there's a lot of redundancy you probably saw on a lot of these strategies. So I'm gonna go and clean them up and like consolidate them and make them more concise. So when you look at the list next month, it's gonna be like the draft list that's gonna be in the SERP, and you all then can start to provide further detail there. For the passenger vehicle group, what's something that's exciting you most from the conversation?
Monique, de los vehículos pesados, nada más comentarte que sí logramos revisar todo y sí alcanzamos a leer bien todo y aunque sí fue un poquito extenso, pero muy interesante. Sí, muy interesante. Muchas gracias por ese gran trabajo.
Yeah. Thank you, Marisela. Yeah, and on the passenger vehicle side, Brenda.
Yeah, I think the shuttles for college students who live in Tijuana and cross the border. I think we'll mention green infrastructure to make our transit hubs more appealing to people and safer and cooler too. What else did we talk about? I think it was mostly, we spent a lot of time talking about shuttles.
Yeah.
And for workers as well. Yeah.
For workers, yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you. I'm looking forward to kind of diving in the next couple of weeks, getting those synthesized so that you all have actually a really solid draft list of CERP strategies, which is exciting because this is the hardest part of drafting the CERP, is developing those strategies. We've been able to draw from a really deep well of kind of pre-existing strategies, but also you've all have contributed a lot of amazing ideas in this space as well. So those two things will be combined, and hopefully you'll see those conversations reflected in the draft strategies that we'll share with you next month. So with that, I do want to turn to public comment, and I know that I think I saw him here earlier. Peter, you had a public comment to share. Peter, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, you can share your screen if you want, Peter.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me open this up real quick. And hopefully this works. Cool. Does that work for everyone? Everyone able to see this? Okay, cool. Yeah, well, good to see everyone again. Thank you to Monique and Domingo at the Air District for having us make a quick announcement again. But yeah, we wanted to promote our survey again. For those folks who haven't filled them out yet, we highly encourage you to fill out the survey. It does take about 10 minutes and just 11 questions. And there is a raffle for resident members to complete it. So we highly encourage you all to give some feedback. We really appreciate it. We take every single response into consideration of our study. So if you haven't already done so, I'll put the link in the chat as well. And then if you have any questions as well, you can also reach out to Jonathan London or I with our emails in the link below too. But yeah, thank you so much and appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten so far. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Peter. And like Peter said, that will be in the chat box shortly. So as we close out, I want to walk you through what to kind of expect next at the next few meetings. So let me actually pull this up here. 1 second. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. All right, so what to expect next? What have we done so far? In May, we started to develop the vision and goals, which I'm going to share back with you all in July to provide feedback on the vision and goals, overall vision and goals. Today, we continue to develop those CERP strategies, partially being informed by SANDAG and Caltrans transportation plans, regional decarbonization framework plan, and then also CARB statewide rules. What to expect next month is like I said, you all are going to have the list of the draft strategies. Again, there's a lot of redundant strategies mentioned here. I'm going to synthesize them, boil them down, and then you'll be able to provide feedback on that. You'll also be able to provide feedback on the vision and goals and start identifying timeline and targets for each of those strategies. That conversation is going to take place over the course of July and August. And there may be a possibility that we may need to have like a subcommittee meeting of sorts, meet sometime between July and August as well, so that folks can have more time to go over these strategies. And then in September, October, you all are going to have an opportunity to review the draft CERP document and start to provide feedback there. But the heart of the CERP document itself is these strategies that we've worked on and have been working on as well. So with that, I just want to see if folks, thank you for posting that in the chat, if folks have any last remaining questions or comments before we head out this evening. Awesome. We've done so much today. Alejandro, you want to make us do more?
No, just a little announcement that tomorrow there's a cleanup here in San Isidro at 10 a.m. So if you want to come clean up the community, we can welcome you here. I think the meeting spot is on Cypress Avenue. And from there, we're going to head over to the bridge that crosses is it the 5 or the 805? The one that goes to Willow, from Willow to San Isidro Boulevard. So everybody's welcome tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, Alejandro. Thanks for all the work that you're doing in the community. Any other last minute announcements?
Yo, Manuela, no pude agarrar el código de barras y bueno, lo agarré, pero me está saliendo como una clínica de venas, algo así de las piernas. Y no sé si me podrían poner otra vez el código para poderlo agarrar. Gracias.
Yeah, actually, Peter, can you put that in the chat box again, the link to that survey?
Yeah, I can post the link again. Yeah, the QR code will link to the same link in the chat, but I'll post it again here.
Sí, el código.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that you post it before we log off here. Any other announcements? All right, so what's on our plate to do is we're gonna draft that letter as per your direction. We'll get that out to you all by end of day tomorrow at the latest, and we'll make sure we get that sent over to that committee by tomorrow. Latest would be Friday, so that they have that. So thank you all for another packed meeting, and certainly looking forward to our next conversation where we're going to have certainly continuing a lot of more things to discuss. All right, thank you all. Okay, take care.
Buenas noches a todos. Gracias.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Gracias.